So if you're currently using Zapier.com, but you're not using webhooks, you are missing out on one of the best features that it has to offer. In fact, I automate about 600,000 tasks every single month, and the main trigger or the main action that I use in Zapier is webhooks, right? So what are they and how can they benefit you? Well, essentially, with a platform like Zapier, what it does is it connects different platforms together, right? Maybe you want to connect Google Sheets with Google Drive and you want to send data back and forth in a no-code format, so you don't have to spend the time figuring out how to become a software engineer, right? So you can send information between platforms. And what's great about webhooks is that for a lot of these platforms, they might not have like a native integration built in to Zapier, meaning that you can't just essentially grab a default native plugin and use it, right? But for these web applications that don't have a native integration, they often have accessibility through webhooks, which means that for all of these applications, and these, well, to be exact, over 3,000 applications that you could be connecting together, you can still integrate them through webhooks. So if that sounds like something that is interesting to you and you want to figure out how to learn webhooks, we're going to talk about that in this tutorial, and we're going to give you a very practical solution. So specifically what that practical solution looks like is we are going to have leads generated in this form appear in a Google Sheet like this. So you can get an array or an overview of every single lead that has come in through all of your different marketing platforms so that you can call them and you can just keep a nice list going. Now, this is obviously a very simple example of what you can do, but let's just actually jump over to my automation tab in Zapier.com. And if I actually go over to, let's go ahead and go to all Zaps, and you can see right away that a lot of these Zaps are actually using webhooks. So this icon here is the icon for a webhook. And you don't necessarily have to understand exactly what's going on in these automations, but the key point is to pick out all of the different automations that do require a webhook. So actually, we'll go into this folder right now, djang.ca, and we'll just take a look. You can see all of the webhooks that I'm using. Pretty much every single, actually, oh my gosh. Okay, every single automation except for this one uses a webhook, right? So I use this almost every single time I'm automating anything for my particular business, just because a lot of the integrations that I want to tap into don't have a native plugin, such as this icon here, for example, which would be Bark, right? They have a native plugin for Zapier, but webhooks, you're plugging into applications that don't have that functionality yet. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's build this out. So we want to create a website form, and we want to essentially transfer this information into a Google Sheet, but on a website builder like WordPress, which is what I'm going to be using here. So we can go ahead and I'm just going to log into my main website here and create a page. And by the way, you can create a page using WordPress like I am. You can use any other website builder you want. Maybe you're using Go High Level or Lead Pages or Weebly or Wix or whatever, as long as they have the ability to send information via a webhook, which I'm going to show you what to look for, then you're pretty much good to go. And if they don't, for whatever reason, then I would probably suggest moving away from that to find something that's going to natively integrate into the like applications like Make.com or Zapier, because if you don't, you're going to be pigeonholing yourself into an application that's not going to be able to play nicely or interact or integrate with other software applications that you're going to need to use, which means you'll have to do everything manually. So I would avoid doing things manually as best you can, especially when you're trying to manually do something like 100,000, 200,000, or 600,000 or a million different tasks. Okay, so in WordPress, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna create a page here. Just keep in mind, you don't have to use WordPress, you don't have to use Elementor, which I'm using. You just have to have a place where you can build out a form and link that in to Zapier. So for this tutorial, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna drag and drop a form in here. And this looks good enough for me. And in the actions after submit, so if we scroll down here and we see the actions after submit, we can go ahead and click on that. And okay, I zoomed in a bit too far there. And you can hit this plus icon and there should be a field called webhook, which will essentially allow this field to pop up down here. And it's gonna ask you for specific URL. right? Enter the integration URL like Zapier that will receive the form's submitted data. I always like to enter in advanced data as well, just so that all of the information this form possibly collects is being sent over to that webhook in Zapier.com. Okay, perfect. So we'll go ahead and we're going to create a new Zap in Zapier. And the first thing is we're going to select webhook. Okay, awesome. So this, keep in mind, is a trigger, right? So when it comes to webhooks, there are both triggers and there's also actions, and we're going to be covering both of these in this tutorial. We're going to start with triggers for now. And the first thing I want to point out is that this is a premium action. So what does that mean? It means that if you're just starting out with Zapier for the first time, you're going to have to pay to use this action. So they're essentially pay gating it, right? So if you're not paying as a subscriber, you will not be able to use this functionality. So if we open up an incognito tab here, and I'm just actually going to go over to the pricing page just so you guys get a better picture of what this looks like. You're going to need to be, I believe, yeah, so down here, you're going to need to be on the professional plan, which is going to cost you at least, well, in my case, $28 Canadian every single month. So it's not actually available on the free plan. Just keep that in mind as well. Okay, cool. So the event we're going to do is catch a hook, right? So wait for a new post, put get to a Zapier URL. So I know this sounds super technical, but it's actually very, very simple. Now, before I kind of click into catch webhook, you can see there's actually 3 different options here. There's catch webhook, there's catch raw hook, and there's retrieve pull, right? So there's 3 different options, and I'll kind of just break this down for you guys here. So catch hook essentially means that it's formatting the data in a way that's going to be very friendly with Zapier, right? So when the data comes in, it's going to be received in a way where you can easily use that information in the subsequent steps. So you can see down here, we have step number 2 is an action. We can use the information that we receive very easily. For catch raw hook, to be honest with you, it's very, very rare that I would use this, but essentially you can accept information via its original format. So maybe JSON. This is more of an advanced feature that most people out there will not be using. And the last one is retrieve pull. So a very easy way of interpreting retrieve pull is essentially on a certain amount of time. It could be like every 10 seconds, every 30 seconds, every hour, every day, or whatever. You're sending a ping, right, to something else to see if new information has arrived. So think about like, a weather network app. So for example, for these weather network apps, they have to see, they have to list all the updated weather in any given region at any given time, right? And they don't have staff necessarily in every single region. So what do is they ping in, they send a request to the weather station in every single city, let's say every minute or every 15 minutes, and they request an update. And when that update comes in, then they refresh the data on the app so it displays to their customers. Once again, it's very uncommon that you're probably going to use the retrieve pull app, but it has specific circumstances where it's beneficial. However, I personally don't use it very often. So for pretty much 99% of my automations, I'll just go ahead and use the catch hook. Okay, and then we can click continue down here. And once again, you can pick off a child, but this is pretty redundant. What essentially this means is that you can choose to only receive a portion of the information. So let's say, for example, actually I'm gonna show you this as an example. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna come back to this just because it's gonna be easier to visualize with the example. So I'm gonna copy this link here, right? And then I'm gonna go back to my page and I'm going to paste in the webhook URL and I'm gonna click publish. So what this is effectively doing is every single time somebody clicks send on this form or they submit the form, it will send the information captured on the form. So the name, the email, the message, it will send all that information to this webhook and it will be received here. So let's go ahead and let's do that. I'm gonna preview the page here and we can go ahead and enter in the information here. And this is message. Okay, perfect. We'll go ahead and click send. Your submission was successful. So we can go ahead and test trigger, and you'll see that this information has been logged, right? So we actually got this response from this form being submitted in Zapier. The name, Jono, email equals, well, my email, and the test message is, this is a test message, right? So all of that information has been received. Now, kind of coming back to the pick off a child key, maybe you only want one piece of information here. Maybe you just want the name. Well, you could essentially put that in here so that you're just receiving information from the name, something kind of similar to this, right? But it's a bit redundant just because by default, Zapier will pass you all the information that's being sent by that form or by any webhooks that's sending information in, which means that you know, you can just quickly grab whatever it is that you're looking for. You don't have to necessarily select only one field. It's by default going to pass you all the information you need. So personally, me, I've never used this and I probably never will because it just seems very limiting in scope. Okay, awesome. So we can go ahead and click and continue with the selected record. And the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to drop this into the Google Sheet here, right? So we want to essentially update this information when a new lead comes in. So we'll do Sheets here, select Google Sheets, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select, where is it? We want to add a row. Okay. Create a spreadsheet row. Okay, we can go ahead and click continue, and we're gonna have to choose an account. Okay, perfect. So test has been successful. Your authentication is working correctly. We can go ahead and move on to the next step here. So we actually have to go into Sheets and we have to make sure we're on the right account, and we're gonna go ahead and choose to create a new sheet. And I'll title this test webhook tutorial Zapier. Okay, perfect. We'll do form ID, name, email, message. Okay, awesome. We'll come back in here and we're gonna go ahead and select the right drive. And then from the drop down on the spreadsheet, it should be the first one that we just created here. And the worksheet is sheet 1. This is just down here essentially. I'm not actually sure if you guys can see it, but if I just add a bunch of tabs here, you can have, you know, like as many of these tabs as you want. You just need to select the right tab for the Zapier automation to work off of. Okay, awesome. So we can go ahead and enter in the form ID here. So I can search by value here and form ID. Okay, so we've got the form ID, we've entered that in. We're just essentially mapping the information that we received in that webhook, right? So all the information that we received from this form, which is being sent over to this webhook, is now available for us to utilize, right? So we can essentially use this just like any other integration in Zapier. And then we can go ahead and select the name. So first name value or name value, and then email, same kind of deal here. Okay, there we go. And last thing we're gonna do is select message. Okay, awesome. And that's pretty much it. We're good to go. I can click continue, test this app, and when we go back over to sheet number 1, you can see the information is being logged there. So if we go ahead and publish this, it's going to work automatically. We'll refresh the page, we'll try another email. We'll do George this time. George@gmail.com and test123 as the message. We'll submit it in, and here we go. The next candidate has been added to the Google Sheet, and you can go on and on with new people that are filling out forms on your website, and the information is going to be listed right here. Okay, perfect. So that's the trigger, but there's also actions as well, right? So webhooks have triggers, but they also have actions, right? So if we go back here, we can create an event, right? And there's 4 different options here. We can have a custom event, which is very rare. It's a very technical thing to do. You can have a get request, a post request, and a put request. So this is all essentially like software jargon, right? So get is you're retrieving information. So you're just trying to get information very similarly to this first webhook. You're just trying to receive information from a particular place. So for example, example get request. So for example, let's say we go to sample get request here, and we can just go to this URL, and we can just essentially plug in any of these. And this is just as an example so that you guys can see what it kind of looks like if you have a get request. Okay, you can just enter that URL in, and what's going to happen is, well, we'll test this step, and it's going to receive information from that list. And you can see all of the information here. So in this example, I know this is a bit complicated, but you're essentially grabbing employees from a company. This is just like a sample test JSON file of employees that you can essentially use. This is what the data looks like inside. You can be like, the first employee is Tiger Nixon. His salary is $320,000. He's 61 years old. The next person is Garrett Winters. This is their salary, this is their age, so on and so forth. It's not as common to use this, but to be honest, I've never used it. Well, that's not true. I've used it quite a few times, but it's certainly uncommon. And then put is essentially you're updating a file that already exists, and post is you're essentially creating a new file. So for 99% of the time, you're probably going to be using post, and posting is just similarly to, think about it like this form that we created. You're just sending information from Zapier to an external application. Very similarly to how we sent information from this website form here to Zapier. A post request is just fancy jargon for saying we're sending information from Zapier.com into something else. So for example, maybe you want to send it into a CRM, right? So that could be something that you may want to do. So you can maybe send a text message or send an email or automatically call that particular client. So in this example, we'll go ahead and we will create that. So I'm going to log into the CRM that I have here, and we'll go ahead and quickly create something so that you guys can see how this works with the post request. Okay, it's just gonna take a couple seconds to load here. So this is Go High Level. You guys don't necessarily need to know anything about Go High Level. You can use any CRM you want, but this is just an example of kind of how you can use post requests in Zapier. So you're sending information to a third-party application. In this case, it's Go High Level, and they have an inbound webhook feature here. So we can send information to this URL, and as soon as it's sent, we'll be able to use that data. Okay, so we can plug in that URL here, and the payload is just gonna be a type form. There's different options of like how you can send information, but typically speaking, the default is form that you'd be sending information over, and that way it's easy to use in whatever application you're sending information to. And then we just have to insert the data that we want to send into Go High Level. So for example, we could go ahead and say name here, and then we can go ahead and use email, and we can go ahead and use message here. So recall this form that we got information from. We collected the name, we collected the email, and we also collected the message, right? And we're essentially taking all the information we collected in this form, and now we're just sending it over to this webhook here in Go High Level. Now, of course, right now we're just defining the name of the value that we want to send. So the name here is just going to be the name that somebody filled out in the form. So we're collecting information from the trigger, which is right here, and we're essentially passing that along with the name of name. And with the email name here, it's going to be, okay, the name is going to be email, and here's the value. And then the message is we're gonna just pass in the message value as well here. Okay, perfect. So we can go ahead and click continue, and we can just test that step, and we can see that it's been successful. The test request has been received. And once we come back in here, we can fetch that request, or that's just fancy lingo for saying, you know, can we see if something was sent over? And the answer is yes, it has been sent over. You can see the information here, right? So now we've sent it to a third-party application, and just really quickly, I'll kind of show you just, you know, some examples of what you can do here. I'm just essentially creating a new contact in this CRM. This is a test webhook Zapier tutorial. And great, now that we have it in the CRM, maybe we want to send like an email, right, to that particular client. And now we can go ahead and do so because we have that email that we sent over from Zapier. We have the name. We could essentially even come in here and use the name, right? Hey, first name or last name, thanks for inquiring, right? So it's really powerful stuff. The world's, you know, your oyster, and there's an infinite amount of things that you can do using Zapier webhooks. Not only can you receive information into Zapier from third-party applications that may not have a native plugin to Zapier, but you can also send information to third-party applications that also don't have a native plugin to Zapier. So what I showed you there is we sent information from, and I'll just kind of zoom in and show you guys one more time. We sent information from a lead form, and that was received in Zapier, right? We received that information in step one, and then we sent that information using like a native plugin app, right, to Google Sheets, right? This is something that's already built into Zapier. You don't have to use a webhook. And that information was logged here. And then lastly, we sent another post request. Post is just a fancy way of saying I'm sending information from Zapier somewhere else, similarly to how we sent information from this form into Zapier, but in this case we sent it over to the CRM, which in this case is Go High Level. You can use whatever it is that you want, and we can use that data in their automated sequence to do whatever it is that we want, such as emails or text messages or all of that kind of stuff. So thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial. I hope you found value in it. If you guys like content just like this, please make sure to give me a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe below as well. If you guys want to chat, reach out on Instagram. If you guys want some consultation or help with some certain projects you guys are going through, please reach out to me as well. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.